Matthew here from miniwargaming.com. Actually, for a split second forgot where I was from. Welcome to another Sit and Talk. This is a show where you ask me questions and I answer as many of them as I can in about an hour. So you can sit back, relax, paint some miniatures. You don't even really need to watch me because unless you don't mind like hand movements and stuff, really it's just about the audio. And people are like, you should put this in a podcast and make an MP3, and I agree I should. Maybe one day I will. And so I'm going to be doing the questions a little different this time. I'm going to, last week I tried random questions, which I thought was a step in the right direction because then it didn't matter if you posted later. Although, in that case, I answered the questions on the Wednesday morning, which means if you posted questions on Wednesday or Thursday, then they wouldn't even have a chance to get answers. So you still want to get your questions in the first few days. I typically try to record this on a Thursday morning before it goes out, so if you get your questions in the first few days, you have a better chance. But I still wasn't quite satisfied with just being random, because then, you know, there's got to be some semblance of order to this. So I'm going to do a combination. What I've done is I've written my program that displays the comments for me to give me the top 10 comments that have a minimum number of ratings. So there's a threshold that they have to pass. So if there's less than that, than 10, then it'll just be that many. And then after those top 10, or whatever it is, up to a maximum of 10, then it just displays the rest of them in random order. Okay, so that means a couple things. One, if you have like two comments that you're like posting one after another and one of them like follows the other one and needs to be in context, it'll be taken out of context. So make sure that your comment is like self-contained. And also if you have like a couple different questions that are completely unrelated, you could always put a couple comments instead of one. But don't spam comments just in the hopes of getting it, because I have been actually scrolling through them to see if anybody spams them. And then I try to delete any duplicates and things like that before we go through this. Also, the topics of these questions can be anything that people want. Typically we go into the topics of wargaming and business, but it also goes into personal things, also religion and politics. So if you are easily offended by the topics of religion or politics, or wargaming or business, then please do not watch the show. Go watch something else. This is just a more casual, laid back, just ask me anything kind of show. And of course, if you want your questions answered, make sure you post them below. If you're watching this on YouTube, there will be a description or a link in the video description below to go and to our website and actually leave the comments there. So let's get right into this. Zerak, hi Matt, I would like to know your thoughts on kilts. I think kilts are fine for Scottish people and other people who want to imitate Scottish people. I don't think I'd personally want to wear one, but I'm not Scottish. Although I probably have some sort of Scottish blood in my ancestry. I've got like all of the European stuff. Like Irish, I know I have Irish, French, English, Scottish, actually I do have Scottish, German, even some, I think I even have some Jewish. But it might have actually been, I can't remember what my dad's does a lot of family history and genealogy, that kind of stuff. And I know there was Russian, it might have been a Russian who lived in Israel. So I'm not sure if it was a Jew or not. I can't remember. I'd have to take a look. So all sorts of European stuff. So obviously, as if there's a little bit of Scottish in me, then I can't have a problem with kilts. I think they're fine. Instinctual. Hey Matt, bit of a random off-topic question here. Well, you've come to the right show. My wife is pregnant with her second child. Congratulations. And we have a 3-year-old that is rapidly approaching school age. I'm thoroughly disappointed in the public school systems here in the US. Ex-cop, so a bit biased about the gang problems. And wanted to know what your thoughts were on homeschooling. My wife and I both have master's degrees in the sciences and are well-rounded in other disciplines. There are great resources in our area and many networks of parents and churches working to improve it. I just wanted to know if you'd considered it for your children, what you thought of Canada's public schools, and if you had encountered any homeschooling programs through Latter-day Saint, and what have you thought of them. Thank you for any info you might have. I don't have a problem at all with homeschooling. I think it's an acceptable alternative. There's pros and cons to it. The pros obviously being that you have complete control over what your kids are being taught, and I admit, like having 2 kids with a third on the way, and my 4-year-old about to go into junior kindergarten, I admit that, you know, I'm troubled by some of the stuff that gets taught. Even when I was going through public school, the stuff that would be taught, I remember in high school, the books that we would have to read. I wish I could go back and actually like stand up to my English teachers and be like, you know what, we shouldn't be reading this, or at least I'm not going to read this, because some of them were even like pornographic to a point, like just talking about sexuality and all that kind of stuff. And we even watched in high school we even watched a movie that had full frontal nudity in it, and that one I actually did talk to my teacher. I said okay, because we didn't watch the first half, I didn't know I was going to do that. And after class, I told him, I'm like, I'm not coming to class tomorrow for the second half. But yeah, so there's a lot of garbage in there, and then of course there's the problems of the bullying and everything else, and so it can kind of be a scary thought. So homeschooling seems to kind of remove all those elements. But the other thing that homeschooling removes is a lot of the social elements that school have. Now I know there's a lot of resources where you get together with other homeschoolers, but there is still something that's, you're not going to be able to replace that 30 hours a week of interaction with teachers and a lot of other students. So that to me, that's a con. Because as much as you're removing the bad social stuff, you're also removing all the good social stuff. And there's a lot of things that can be developed by even being in the bad social stuff. I was actually bullied as a kid for grades 4, 5, and 6, quite badly. Not physically, just verbally. And that was really hard. I had a really hard time in school. And yet I wouldn't want to go back and say, okay, I should be homeschooled at that point. So it's hard to say. It's also what we experience. I experienced public school. I have experienced public school all the way from kindergarten up to the end of high school, and so it's not quite as scary to me because I'm like, okay, it was bad, but I made it through it, and with the proper principles being taught at home by my parents outside of school time, that was more than enough to make up for it. So I'm of the opinion that it's fine for my kids to go to public school, and then I just make sure that outside of school there's a lot of interaction with us as the parents, and that we teach them as many good principles as we can to help offset any bad things that they learn at school from not just teachers, but other kids, of course. But having said that, I have nothing against people who want to do homeschooling. It's just my personal choice, that wouldn't be something I'd want to do. We don't really have any programs in our church for homeschoolers. We have tons of programs in our church for all sorts of stuff, for kids all the way up to a youth program. Yeah, heck, even for adults, there's lots of stuff. But nothing particularly for homeschoolers. However, I've known several people who were homeschooled or who are homeschooling their kids, and so it also varies from child to child. Some children will be fine at school, and others will have a harder time. So, yeah, so I guess that's it. Like there's pros and cons to both. Personally, my kids are going to go through public school for the main reasons that I think it'll be better for them, and that we can do enough offsetting of any of the bad stuff that happens there. So we can get all the pros of it, and we can try to minimize the cons rather than trying to homeschool them. Yeah, so that's my thoughts. Nagarum29, Dawag has come. What do you think of the new Morkanaut and Gorkanaut? I think they're cool. I looked at them, read the White Dwarf, I have it right back there, that has the models and stuff. They look cool. Their stats are neat. I like how they've taken this idea of, let's make two different models. We're going to call them two different things, like the Imperial Knight, the Knight Paladin, and the Knight Errant. They actually have two different stat lines, but they're identical. It's just one weapon that gets swapped out. The Morkanaut and Gorkanaut are pretty much the same. Now the Morkanaut, I get them mixed up if Mork or Gork is the smart one, but the smart one. Let's say Mork is the smart one, like the Big Mech one, where Gork is like the smashy one. So like the Big Mech one can also have like a custom force field. But it's really, they're almost identical models. So, but I still think it's cool. I think it's really neat that those models coming out. As far as I can see from the rumors, that's all the new stuff that they're getting, and that's kind of disappointing. I was hoping that the orcs would get more stuff than just one new model, but that they call two new models, but really it's just one new model. Like they're so similar that you could just magnetize a couple parts, and you've got a Morkanaut and a Gorkanaut. But it definitely is cool. I like it. If you're aware of any of the rumored changes to the orc rules or units, what are your thoughts? Orcs tough or orcs the toughest? Yeah, I'm not sure overall the rules. I've heard rumors that the looted wagons are being removed, and that kind of sucks, but at the same time, you have allies, so you can still loot all sorts of vehicles and bring them as allies and just count them as that kind of thing, so it's all good. Orange Hairband, how's it going, Matt? Good, thank you. Do many pranks happen around the often? Do many pranks happen around the office? Dave and previously Jay strike me as a tricksy sort. No, not too many pranks. You get the occasional time where like Dave ran in and scared me last week. Or Jay sometimes would like steal models off the table or people's wallets. And then return them, of course. But no, not too many pranks. Necronomicon. So Matt, you are a Mormon. Yes, I am. Don't Mormons believe that it is okay to have multiple wives? That's a question that's hard to answer really quickly. What I can say right now is we currently do not practice that. That has been practiced in the past, but since it's illegal, it's not practiced. Do I believe I want to have multiple wives? Not really, but that's a hard one to answer. So if you want me to give you a more in-depth answer, send me an email, matthew@miniwargaming.com, and we can talk about that. And other people that are watching this are like, what? It's like, well, yeah, it's just, like I said, you can email me if you want more information on that. Have you ever thought about doing that? No, of course not, because it's illegal and was actually not even practiced in the church right now. And if so, how do you feel? Please don't be offended by my question if I'm misinformed, because I'm not proud to admit it. Most of what I know about the Mormon Church comes from South Park. Well, that's probably not your best source of information for anything. So if you really want to know more about like Mormons' views, then go to Mormon.org. It's a really good site that just basically lays out our beliefs and doctrines, and just a nice quick way for you to read through them, and it has a way to request more information if you are interested in that. So Mormon.org, you can check it out there. DC Eiking. Sneaky Dave, always somewhere in the background, hanging out with the Zinch, manipulating things. How old should children be before they are indoctrinated into a religion? Should religion be taught only as a college course? Why would religion need to be taught as a college course? That's one thing, like be taught world religions as a course, but why would you teach religion as a college course? I think if you have a firm belief in something, that you better teach it to your kids right from the time that they can understand anything. Even if your belief is different than mine, I'd still want you to have such a firm belief in that you can't help but want to share it and have your kids learn it. Now you use the word indoctrinate, and that kind of has a negative connotation, of course, because it implies brainwashing or something like that. But no, religion is not something that needs to be taught in schools. Schools don't need to be involved with religion in the sense where they need to teach religious classes. Now, there are some, that's not 100% true. Like, I know like our church owns some schools, like Brigham Young University, and there are classes you can take, they're called institute classes, where you can actually, it's a course on the Bible or a course on the Book of Mormon, that kind of stuff. And that's fine, because you just go and you do that. But what I'm talking about is like public school, where you go to public school and there's all sorts of religions. It's not like a Mormon public school or a Catholic public school, it's just a public school. That shouldn't have any bias towards a single religion or a non-religion at that. Like, they shouldn't teach atheism, they shouldn't teach Christianity, they should just teach what they know to be true in science and leave it at that. Leave the whole theories of God existing, not existing to the churches and to families. But if you believe in something, even if it's that you don't believe in God, it's something, like, if you feel that it actually has an impact on your choices and everything, then you kind of have a moral obligation to teach it to your children. So that's important. Or should we incorporate the various currently accepted religions into what we teach about ancient Greece or the Egyptian pharaohs and their belief systems? We teach, at least here in the States, dead religions, but leave the current religions out of the classroom until you can take a college course in those subjects. Yeah, and taking a college course on religions, that's fine as well. But the best way to learn about any religion in particular is to talk to people from that religion. And because they're obviously the ones that practice it and they know what they practice. And no matter what you hear, it's just so many things can be taken into context or not understanding. If you want to learn about Catholicism, then talk to a Catholic. Preferably a practicing one, not just one who kind of thinks that they're Catholic. If you want to learn about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, then talk to somebody like me or to the missionaries or something like that. That's the best way to learn about religion. And of course, teach your kids what you believe to be true. That's very important. All right. And now I just hope, in saying all of that, I hope they didn't take that to be me like attacking what you were saying right there. It's just more something I strongly believe. And so when you ask that question and I get that response, I got nothing against you asking that question. I'm perfectly fine with it. So please don't be angry with me. Ipak Cruden. Hi Matt, on the topic of alien species and their impact on religion, if you somehow both survived long enough for humanity to encounter a sapient alien species and maintained your religious beliefs, what impact would that discovery have on your beliefs if the alien species in question looked nothing like us? For example, if they were methane-breathing crab monkey things with exoskeletons, or if they looked like the classic greys. That's hard. It's hard to answer a hypothetical question. Like, what if you lived long enough to find out that gravity didn't exist and that it was just all a make-believe thing? Or what if you lived long enough to find out that we're actually all plugged into the Matrix? Like, you can't really ask somebody what their belief system would be shaped by a completely hypothetical situation based on nothing that we currently have based on fact. Like we just don't have any information on that. So to answer your question, I can't answer that question because, for one thing, I don't necessarily believe that it could happen, and so it's kind of like, let me think. If you find, I don't know even how to say it. It's the question itself implies something that your belief system doesn't believe can happen. Like if you found out that there was absolute proof that God didn't exist, how would that infect your belief on whether God existed? It's like, well, that's kind of a cyclical question there. It's like, well, if it's undeniable proof that God doesn't exist, which currently doesn't exist, I mean, that proof, then how, of course, then your belief system would be changed because it's undeniable. Then how do you not change that? But then my belief system is that would never happen, obviously, because I believe that he does exist. So that's a tricky question to answer because it kind of has that fallacy of answering the question in the question. Black Orc Down. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if armed with armed? Oh, you put an F in there. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if armed with a chainsword? Well, I still think a woodchuck could chuck as much wood as a woodchuck could chuck if it was armed with a chainsword. I think that's the simple answer, right? Cecil 824. Hey Matt, Cecil 824. Yeah, that's how I said it. Got a few questions. One, I've got a friend who's a small independent retailer and is very talented at painting. I wanted to know if you'd be willing to give him a small plug if he painted up a conversion model for you. I can provide some pictures of some of the items he's painted to showcase his ability. We currently have a painter partner program where basically painters can, painting commission studios, even if they're one-man businesses, can apply to join this. And what they do is they complete jobs for us, but instead of being paid in cash, they're paid in advertising credit. And that advertising credit can be used for advertising videos or on our site, all that kind of stuff. So if you go onto miniwargaming.com and you scroll to the bottom, you can see a link that says Painting Partner Program. Just click that and read the information. So the answer is yes, as long as he's accepted into the program. Two, in regards to the Kickstarter, rather than dictating specifically the direction Mini Wargaming goes, perhaps just a Kickstarter specifically for an improvement you would make a decision on. Example, a Kickstarter specifically for a new website, a Kickstarter for a lease for a new studio, focusing on funding a particular army. While obviously not everyone would contribute, every little bit helps. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. The thing is, we're not, at this point for what we're doing, we're not struggling to raise funds for that because we have our Vault program. It's really interesting because of YouTube and social media, we have this new type of business where people, small businesses, make entertaining content for other people in all sorts of markets. Video gaming is really big, but we also have all sorts of these shows that are like 5-10 minutes long, whether they're news shows or like science shows or educational in some way or entertaining in some other way, or cartoons like people do their little animated shorts that are either parodies. You got all sorts of movie ones like CinemaSins that does, they have a bunch of stuff, but like they have the everything wrong with fill in the blank in 10 minutes or less or whatever it is. We got How It Should Have Ended, we've got Honest Trailers, you get Tobuscus, like you have all these new types of people, and it's not like the original big YouTubers who are like Smosh and stuff who just make funny short videos, although that's incorporated as well. Now it's this whole plethora of entertainment that you have access to that you can actually get it if you find enough of the channels that you like. That's the entertainment that you need. You don't even need to have TV or other stuff. So a lot of these people are struggling to find ways to monetize it. You might think, well, there's the YouTube Partner Program, and that gives you money to a certain point. And if you're a one-man operation and you're getting lots of views, then that can be enough. But most people don't want to remain a one-man operation. They want to expand, and the moment you expand, all of a sudden YouTube revenue just usually isn't enough. And so then there's things like Kickstarter or Subbable or Patreon. These things are wonderful. But the thing is, we started a Mini Wargaming Vault years ago, and it's really taken off. And that's allowing us to provide what we need. And so, for example, if we need money for a new studio, what we need to do now as a business is take the profit each month, because now we are profitable, and we save it up until we've got the amount that we need, and then we put that money into the new studio. Or if we need more terrain, we budget for terrain. Rather than continually doing more and more Kickstarters, which gets viewed more as a money grab by some people. It's not viewed by everybody like that, but there is the negative consequence of doing a Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign where people think that you're just begging for money. And in a sense you are, but at the same time it's like you look at Will Wheaton from Tabletop, who raised $1.5 million for his next season of Tabletop. Sorry, Will Wheaton from Geek and Sundry. And they even raised enough money to also do an RPG show as well. And that's great. And his funding ran out from Google because Google was paying him to do the show at first. And so it made sense for him to just try to raise a bulk sum of money to see if they would continue, and it worked. Because they don't get enough views that their advertising would cover anywhere near their operation costs. Nowhere near, not even a small, well, I guess it would be a small percentage. So Kickstarter's not really the answer necessarily. You don't want to do them on a continual basis unless you're really kickstarting different products. Like Cool Mini or not shows that you can do multiple Kickstarters per year and make them successful, but each one that they do is kind of a new product line or an expansion to an existing product line. And so that's different. That's like products that people can contribute. That's the other thing. If you're doing a Kickstarter or Indiegogo, they're so much better if your perks are something tangible. Like we did the Dark Potential Kickstarter, we raised $90,000, and I had like just an idea, and we raised $90,000. But the perks were getting the starter sets and the miniatures and all of that. Whereas then we did our Indiegogo campaign for our new studio last year when we shut down our store, and even though we had a way bigger audience, we only raised $30,000 to $35,000, which was a great amount of money. But that's because the perks were just like, hey, get our digital DVDs or get vault memberships or these things that weren't tangible. So I think that's part of the reason that it didn't do as well, is because the perks weren't awesome. The only people that would contribute were those who really were just contributing to support us, which is awesome. But you also want to grab all those people who are contributing because they want the perks. That's really what it comes down to. Not everybody's going to do it for just pure altruistic reasons. They're going to do it because they want the perks that are there. So doing multiple Kickstarters for expanding our business when there's not like a physical thing that people can get, I think would be more detrimental in the long run. I'd rather instead have a free Blu-ray giveaway, like we did the other month, and all of a sudden, boom, we add a bunch of people to the vault because you have to be a vault member to get it. Or we have all these campaigns that have been coming out and really helping to grow our vault. And so we're at that point now where we can afford to buy more terrain. We have to budget everything. We're not making millions of dollars a month and everything, and that allows us to do whatever we want. But so we still need to budget. We still need to grow enough so that we can start hiring more people to make more content. But at this point, we can pretty much do what we want to do as long as we're patient enough and willing to save up the money to do it. Talking about a new studio, we're actually going to be rearranging our offices, and we are going to be building a second studio in here. That should be up and running within the next few weeks, hopefully. And that'll allow us to have less conflicts. 3, if the Kickstarter isn't the best way to further support you guys, what would you suggest? Okay. Basically, if you are looking to support us, be a Vault member. And you say here, I'm already a Vault member personally, and encourage everyone I've played with to join also. And you know what? That is enough. Honestly, that's enough right there. That's huge. And you might think, well, I'm just paying $3 a month or $10 a month, or heck, even if you're a gold member doing them monthly, not yearly, you're just paying $20 a month. You're thinking, what does that really contribute? How, like, really, you can't build a studio with one person paying $5 or $10 a month. Well, the answer is yes, you can, because it's hard individually to see yourself as really contributing to a larger cause with such small contributions. But the fact of the matter is, because you're not the only one doing it, it adds up. All these people doing it, and we've got thousands and thousands of Vault members now, all paying the $3 or $5 or $10 or $20 a month. And that adds up. That really makes a difference. And so Vault members are actually providing us with almost everything, well, everything that we need. We're about 90% of our revenue, at least, maybe even 95%, comes from our Vault members. So the fact that you're a Vault member is already awesome. And so just feel good about that. Of course, commenting, liking, sharing our videos, sharing our Facebook posts, telling your friends about us, that'll help as well. That never goes amiss. But the fact that you're a Vault member, that's like high level of achievement of supporting Mini Wargaming right there, and we definitely really appreciate that. You know, we might still have Kickstarters and Indiegogo campaigns for special things, like if we ever, you know, once I get back to making Dark Potential, who knows when, then, you know, we'll definitely want to do a campaign for that, because we need to raise this bulk amount of money that's outside of our current budget, because our current budget all goes towards making videos. So things like that. You know, you want to support us, and obviously you can contribute there. But just be a Vault member, and you are awesome. 4, what do you get when a taco eats a burrito? A taquito. Okay. I like tacos and burritos, and I like taquitos as well. Although not as much as tacos. Notice you looked a little tired, undoubtedly with another kid on the way, and working so much takes a toll. Hope that awful joke puts a smile on your face just the same. I've actually just over the past few weeks I've been having a harder time sleeping. It's just I suffer from a little bit of insomnia and stuff, and so sometimes I've just had a bad night. That's really what it comes down to. Congratulations on the baby on its way. Best wishes in general, and keep up the good work, Travis. Thank you, Travis. Technoman. Hey Matt, I have a solution for your generic Warcaster model for a War Machine Hordes narrative campaign. Privateer Press has their line of their tabletop RPG figures. Oh yeah? Many of which are Warcaster solos that when we ran our campaign we used. I did not know they had tabletop RPG figures. I'll have to look at that. We would then take faction powers like Arcane Shield for Signar, based on that, or have them use a stat line similar to another base Warcaster. As the campaign wore on, we would add more abilities and powers based on success or failure in their missions. There's enough variety in the models to allow customization and are easy to tweak for your needs. Hope this helps. That does. I'll take a look at that. Thank you. Ultimentra. Hey Matt, I posted a comment in the Snagabog's Greed post-game discussion regarding the possibility of you guys doing Astra Militarum or Imperial Guard at some point for a future narrative campaign. Even if it's to a limited extent, serving as a planetary defense force waiting for the mini Wargaming Space Marine chapter to save them, like in the game Space Marine. I did want to know if you guys are interested in buying an Astra Militarum army for your studio, but rather if the seemingly inhibitive cost of collecting Astra Militarum is putting you guys off the idea. Astra Militarum is one of the more expensive armies to collect because there's a lot of infantry vehicles involved. I hope you do expand your available AM in the future because they have so many cool, amazing units, models, and some really amazing stuff from Forge World. Definitely want to collect an Imperial Guard army or Astra Militarum army. Really the only reason that we haven't done it yet is because we're currently working on our Space Marine army. I think we're up to 7,000 or 8,000 points that are currently being worked on getting painted right now. And so it's just a matter of time before we do. We want to collect every army, especially now that we're doing narrative campaigns, but we also don't just want a couple thousand points of every army. We want like 5,000 to 10,000 points of every army. Heck, I really want 10,000 to 15,000 points of every army. And then even 15,000 to 20,000 points of my favorite ones like Necrons and Tyranids and Space Marines probably soon too. But I definitely want a big Imperial Guard army. We do already have one we bought off of somebody, and it would be adequate to a point, but it needs to be expanded on. So yeah, I agree. And it's also because they're the humans, right? Space Marines aren't the humans. Space Marines are genetically modified humans. And so the most relatable stories, of course, are the humans versus aliens, or humans versus evil, that kind of stuff. So we definitely want them in there. Captain Obvious. Hey Matt, just a passing thought from listening to the sit and talk. You said that the main studio is usually full, so this gives you limits, and due to your losing or selling your warehouse space, you well, not selling, we lease it. So we just decided not to lease it anymore. You've had to cram a few things together. But is there not an area where you could set up another table and do some battle reports? To answer your question, I already answered that. We're actually going to be moving around some of the offices, and then we're going to be creating a new studio. It'll be a smaller room, but it should work. And I know you mentioned your main thought is like the free ones should be in the bad area and the fault ones should be in the studio, but they should both be good. Two good studios. Paradox. I found it hard to get any good 25mm trees for my 40K board. Apart from the GW ones, what do you use on your boards? We order from a company called Model Builder Supply. I think they're based in Canada, and we just bought a ton of trees from that. It was like 20 bucks for 2 trees. It sounds like a lot, and maybe it is. I'm not quite sure, but they're already made, and then we would just create a little wooden base, dirt, static grass, and we would stick them on. They actually, the nice thing about them is they have removable bases, so you just glue the removable base on the wooden base, and so you can actually pull the trees off, which is great for when you're playing. So Model Builder Supply, I think it's actually the brand is Model Builder Supply too, because they also sell a lot of other brand stuff. So just Google that, Model Builder Supply, and like I said, I believe it's in Ontario, Canada. There's got to be other places that sell that kind of stuff though. Colossus. So those sneaky Necrons are still out there. Are they going to be the common theme through this entire campaign series? I guess I don't want to give away too much. The answer is no. No, you're definitely going to see more of them. I'm just not going to say when. It's not just going to be all about them, but there's going to be some interweaving of campaign stories. Let me just put it that way. Case 13. Hey Matt, who is the guy that voices and makes the opening for all your videos? They all look really good. The guy that voices them is mainly Dave. I've voiced a couple of them, but they're mainly Dave shouting into the camera. Who makes the openings for our videos? Well, it depends which ones you're talking about. The older ones, Dave mainly made. I kind of had my hand in a couple of them, but I'm not really good at that kind of stuff. We have a co-op student, his name is Colin. He's made the new mini Wargaming intro and some of like I think he made the Snagabog's Greed intro and the one for the new campaign that's out right now. So He's worked on a lot of stuff here, so we've been liking the stuff that he's been putting out too. Miso. Hi Matt, love the campaigns, but do you think you could have a break between each one? They're all running into each other at the moment. Are you kidding? People love them so much. We can't have a break. We still have a regular battle reports too, so that's good. You could do one every 2 months just with a week or so break. They just don't seem as special if there are no breaks at all in between each one. I know what you're saying, but the fact of the matter is, I eventually want to be doing 2 per week. 2 40K ones per week. Like Tuesday there's a 40K campaign and Thursday there's another one. And then there's, on Wednesday there's a War Machine narrative campaign. On Friday there's an Infinity narrative campaign. That's what I want to see. On top of the regular battle reports. Because you can't replace the regular battle reports with narrative because they're not the same thing. So I don't want to decrease our regular battle reports and replace them with narrative. I want to do those ones plus a narrative. Now obviously that's not really super possible right now, mainly because we have one studio, but that'll hopefully change. But it is something that I want to do in the future. So no, we're definitely not going to be taking breaks. On top of that, I've got ideas for like 15 more campaigns. If I take breaks in between them, it'll take me the next 10 years to get all those done. And I don't want to do that. They're so much fun. Like, we just love doing them. We just have so much fun doing them. They're hard. I have a hard time doing them because there's just so much stress to make them really good. But in the end, when I think of the stories that I have ideas for the next campaigns that I want to do, oh, I'm so excited. So, no, I'm not waiting to do them. We're going to do them, and we're going to do lots of them. And it's going to become a main thing with mini wargaming, for sure. Unless something weird really happens and everybody all of a sudden starts hating them. I just can't see that happening, though, because they have been the single most successful thing we have ever done when it comes to our videos. Baby Smurf 22, how do you feel about the minor nerf to Shadow in the Warp? Minor nerf? It's not a minor nerf, it's a major nerf. It doesn't do anything to stop psychic powers now. Would you change it according to the 7th edition rules, and how? Definitely. They definitely need to change it. I really hope they just haven't got around to it yet. All that Shadows, for those of you who don't know, Shadows in the Warp is a special rule for Tyranids that if you are within 12 inches of a character with that rule, which is basically the Synapse creatures, like Hive Tyrants, Warriors, all that, you get -3 to your leadership if you are a Psyker or Brotherhood of Psykers or all that kind of stuff. And that was fine in 6th edition because all your psychic tests were done in your leadership. Now they don't. So right now, it still has an impact on the game. Because if you peril, for one thing, most of the rolls in the perils of the warp table require a leadership test or something bad happens to you. And of course, if you're within Shadows of the Warp, your leadership is -3. That sucks. Also, you get things like, I played a game against Dave that's been posted. And he was Shadow in the Warped. He had a Psyker. He had his Librarian with a bunch of Cultists. And the Librarian's leadership is normally higher than the Cultists, but because of Shadows in the Warp, it was lower. So he had to use their leadership. And then he had the Horror cast on him, which is make a pinning test at -2 leadership. And so then all of a sudden, he had to use the worst leadership at -2. And he failed it by 1. Whereas if he didn't have the Perils of the Warp, or sorry, if he didn't have Shadow in the Warp, he would have made that with his other leadership. So he does still have an impact. Or if you're playing against Grey Knights with Tyranids, all their guys are Psykers. So essentially in close combat, they're all going to be -3 leadership. And so it seems, and Demons as well. So it still has an impact. But the impact it used to have was meant to shut down Psychic. Like, not totally shut down, but make it harder. So what would I do? I'd almost get rid of the -3 leadership, because having the -3 leadership to Psykers when there's so many of them now, plus having something that shuts down Psychic would be a little much. So I'd have it get rid of the -3 leadership, and I'd have it do something like a better Deny the Witch. Like, if you cast it and you're in Shadows of the Warp, then I get a 5+ Deny the Witch, or I get a +1 to Deny the Witch. So if you're casting a Blessing and you're in Shadows of the Warp, then even though you're not putting it on a Psyker, I still get a 5+ Deny the Witch. Something like that. Or if you cast it on somebody and the Shadows in the Warp, then it's like +1 for being a Psyker, +1 for being in Shadows in the Warp. So it kind of adds on, kind of like a Psychic hood in a sense, except it actually extends to even Blessings. But it would only affect Psykers that are in that 12-inch. Something like that. I don't know what the best course of action is. Adding and removing dice or modifying the dice rolls to try to cast a Psychic power, I think would be too powerful. Like saying you have to get a 5+ instead of 4+ to get your Psychic. Because when you're looking at the Warp Charge 2 and 3 stuff, you're rolling a lot of dice. And changing it from a simple 4+ to a 5+ really, really nerfs the Psychic stuff. And I don't think it should be that powerful. I think it should be minor. So there's my idea. +1 to Deny the Witch against any power that was cast from within the Shadows of the Warp bubble. That's what I would do. And I'd get rid of the -3 leadership. Or at least knock it down to like a -1 or -2 if you're going to keep it. King Log 100. Hey Matt, new vault member here. You're awesome. Just wondering what you think about the new allies chart and the new unbound rules and how they all fit together. Whew, that's a big question. For example, Battle Brothers now being able to deploy in each other's transports, which is fine in my opinion. In my opinion, this makes the Imperium quite powerful as it opens up a wide range of options for them. Just trying to get your thoughts. It's a little strange to think of Space Marines riding inside of Imperium tanks, or Imperial Guard tanks. Not so strange to think of Imperial Guard riding inside of Space Marine tanks, but that's fine. The new allies chart definitely did change the flow, like Tau and Eldar no longer being Battle Brothers, things like that, which makes a big difference. The fact that you can now take anybody as allies, even like Tyranids can take it, it's just that they have to deploy at least 12 inches away. Unbound rules I think are great. I think basically what it's allowed is people to play it however they want and really come up with more fluff reasons to really match up almost anything, and I think that's great. Is it going to create cheese lists? Of course. We've already seen that with demons and the crazy stuff they can do, although it has nothing to do with allies. I'm just saying, like, the unbound stuff it's going to create cheese, and that's fine, because there already was lots of cheese that you would have a hard time against if you were playing certain armies. So I think it's fine. The more open they can make it, the better. Now, at the same time, you don't want to just kind of throw it all open and say, just do whatever you want. You still want to have some restrictions. And I've found that with the tactical missions, if you're playing objectives, the Battleforged lists have a huge advantage over unbound lists. If you're playing the Eternal War missions, not so much, because you need to get the objectives at the end of the game. And well, if your opponent has a super powerful unbound army, they can just kind of destroy you and keep you off the objectives. Whereas if you're playing tactical objectives, the mission just changes so much that you can have these super powerful things and not really get to use them, or have some weak troop choice who actually manages to pull off a lot of points, and you can get such a big victory at first with your Battleforged army that even an unbound list that has beaten the crap out of you later in the game, and you're down to like next to nothing, you could still easily win that game, or at least have a good chance of winning. So I feel that the combination of the tactical objectives, the Maelstrom missions, the Unbound, the Allies, and the Battleforged thing, it's really made a new type of way of playing, and I love it. I absolutely love it. And Elijah. What's up, Matt? Not much. Question, do you like the new show Cosmos by Neil deGrasse Tyson? I haven't really watched it, so I can't say. Comment, I agree with Black Orc Down. Why would you not pay a Vault membership for the painting tutorials? So many ideas. Well, thank you. No, I haven't watched Cosmos by Neil deGrasse Tyson, so I can't really comment on it. Ed Markle, hey Matt, weird question time. Clearly you've not been to this show before, although I know you have, Ed. If you and everyone at Mini Wargaming were invited to San Diego Comic-Con and were offered a full free ride, everything paid for from your doorsteps until you return home, plane, limo, hotel, food, and an HD camera crew to follow each of you around, all free. Only thing is, from the time you leave your hotel room in the morning until you return again that night, all of you must be in cosplay costume of your choice. Nothing lame like a businessman, no surfer dude from Hawaii. A cosplay-worthy costume, something nerd cool. It would be made by you for you by a Hollywood caliber costuming company. The quality, good enough to be in a big budget sci-fi movie. Free and you get to keep it. What would you go as, Matt? I thought you were going to ask, would you do it? I'm like, well, duh, of course I would. What would you go as, Matt? A comic book superhero? A Tyranid warrior? Oh, if you could pull off a Tyranid warrior that actually looked like a Tyranid warrior, because that would be tough, because they don't really have the same body shape as us, you know, being six-limbed and all. That would be cool. Dave as Abaddon or Horus. Oh, or walking around as a Space Marine like they did when the game Space Marine came out. They actually had the company come in and create those costumes. That would be pretty cool. What would Steve go as? A big Necron Lord or something? What would Chris go as? Chris, what would you go as? He's not in his office. Maybe you could have everyone give their own answer. It would be fun to see what they'd come up with. Me and Eldar Farseer. Might as well dream big, right? Yeah, I think I would love to... A Tyranid or Necron thing, obviously, for me would be kind of what I'd want. Tyranid would be hard. Maybe like a Broodlord kind of thing, because they're the closest to having like a human figure, so that would be the easiest to do. Necron-wise, having like this Uber Overlord would be really cool, like with the big old war scythe and all that kind of stuff, or a Lich Guard or something really cool like that. I think I'd go for that. CGMM 14. Two questions, Matt. One, what happened to the Necrons in Greed? You'll have to wait to find out. Two, how are you holding your camera? And what camera do you use to film bat reps? Well, this camera that you can't see. It's a Canon XA10. I really like it. It's not cheap though. How am I holding it? I hold it. Now, to stabilize, what I find helps is kind of the way that your arm tucks right here. Oh, there we are. This is the Canon XA10. So it's a nice camera. And the way that I hold it is just like this. But there's a few tricks to stabilizing that and you kind of get practice. You have to get experience with it after a while too. Kind of having your elbow tucked right here really makes a big difference. As soon as you're away, it's no good. Never use the zoom function unless like on extreme circumstances, because as soon as you zoom in, it accentuates any shaking and any movement. Kind of like if you're using binoculars and you move a little bit, everything moves really fast. Same idea. Other thing is I use this screen right here to help stabilize, because what happens when you're taking clips is I find that often when you're pressing the button to start and stop, you do a little motion like that, and it's really hard not to when you're moving your thumb, or you get like a little shaking that way. But if you hold it right here, you can keep it still while you're starting and stopping. So those are a few little tips. I'm not really awesome with the camera, but for some, and there's also really good image stabilization on this camera, which makes up for the lack of tripod and stable cam or steady cam. Necronomicon. Hey Matt, you said a few sit and talks ago that it would be difficult to do a narrative campaign featuring any of the named characters from 40k, but there are lots of possibilities using some of the less prominent characters. For example, in the fluff, I believe this is in the Space Marine Codex, Trazyn the Infinite has tried to kill Vulcan, Hestan, of the Salamanders on multiple occasions because he wants the artifacts of Vulcan. So you could do a campaign where Hestan has located another artifact and is going to retrieve it, and Trazyn is trying to get it first. Think Indiana Jones versus the Nazis. Also, during the Fate of Fayum campaign, you could have had Ankarin the Traveler come to assist with the battle, because that would make sense based on his lore. Yeah, and you know what? I agree with you. In fact, I have some ideas for incorporating Trazyn the Infinite into some campaigns. What I would probably not do, but I can't really say this. I can't really say what I wouldn't do, because we've only just started doing campaigns. But what I think I probably wouldn't do is have the entire campaign centered around that named character. Maybe have him more a feature, kind of like in Snagabog's Greed, how Astorath the Grim came in at the end. Now maybe something more prominent than that, rather than just showing up at the end. But yeah, I agree with you. It's harder, the more known a character is, the harder it would be to do, because the more developed and more background there is. Slop Artist. Hi Matt, describe or doodle a picture of a codpiece you would pick out for Dave befitting a Chaos Lord's Father's Day. What on earth is a codpiece? And you would pick out for Dave befitting a Chaos Lord's Father's Day. What is a codpiece? I don't even know what a codpiece is. How would I describe or doodle a picture of something I've never heard of? What is a codpiece? What's a codpiece? You know what a codpiece is?
Codpiece?
Yeah.
Protects the groin on nights.
And I keep repeating the word. Codpiece, codpiece.
Codpiece.
So he says, describe or doodle a picture of a codpiece you would pick out for Dave befitting a Chaos Lord's Father's Day.
Oof. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a codpiece.
Okay, yeah. Pass. Miso, congratulations on expecting your third child. Thank you. My question is, apart from the importance of faith, what are the philosophies that are guiding you bringing up your kids? Are you going to get them really into sports? Are you going to make sure they are very academic? Or are you going to try to get them to do other things? And are you happy with the schools in your area? I already answered the school one. Sports and other activities, definitely don't want to overbook them with all sorts of extracurricular activities. I think if they want to get into sports, and that's a desire of theirs, that's for sure. I definitely want to, from an early age, teach them piano, because I play piano, and it's been incredibly useful, just mainly at church, actually. There's just not a lot of pianists, and you always need one when you're singing songs at church, right? And so definitely at least teaching them that, letting them decide once they're a little older if they want to continue it or not. Academic-wise, yeah, definitely super encourage finishing high school, like at a bare minimum, and super encourage post-secondary education, both for my sons and my daughters. I use plural because we're not done having kids, so I don't know how many of each I'll have. And whether that when I say post-secondary, it's not like they have to get a university degree and a master's. Like I have a 3-year pass degree in a Bachelor of Science in university. And if you don't know what a pass degree is, because maybe in the States it's called something different, but it's a 3-year degree instead of a 4-year degree. A 4-year degree is called an honors, or a, I know honors is if you get 80%, I don't remember what it's called. But a pass degree is where you just do the minimum 3 years. And that's what I have. because I was getting into my business. But post-academic or post-secondary, such as college or university, which are two different things here in Canada, or whether it's like an apprenticeship, whatever. It's achieve as much education as possible and achieve a career that'll allow you to support your family, and that's very important. So there's that kind of push. Sports. I'm not a sporty person myself, so I can't say I'll be pushing them to do sports. If they decide they want to get into it, that's fine. What other kind of philosophies and stuff? Lots of reading, lots of playing games, lots of family time. Those are all very important things to us. Am I happy at the schools in my area? I answered the question about public school and all that, but I'd say overall I'd say yes. JT Dogzone. Hey Matt, fellow member of the LDS Church here and Wargamer. Awesome. I'm preparing to go out on my mission soon, and I remember you saying you had served one. Tahiti, I think you said. That is correct. Anyway, I was wondering if you knew how to speak any foreign languages. I always thought that learning to speak a new language is one of the coolest things about many missions. It was a really cool thing. I didn't speak any other languages before I left. In Tahiti, I had to learn French and Tahitian, and they're nothing alike. Tahitian is a Polynesian language, and French, of course, is French. I had 10 years of French in school, which proved very valuable, even though I sucked at it in school. So I was able to learn French a lot faster than Tahitian because of that, and also because Tahitian is such a weird language compared to ours. Like, when you translate French to English or English to French, you can almost always do a one-to-one translation. Like, you think about a sentence in your head and you can just kind of word for word translate it to a certain degree, but Tahitian you can't. It's different grammar structures, different conjugations, just everything's really weird. And if you really want to speak fluently Tahitian, you have to think in Tahitian. Whereas French, you can kind of fake it to a certain degree if you speak English or Spanish or something that has the same kind of structure. A lot of those European-based languages have a very similar structure. I know English and French aren't as similar as French and Spanish and all that, but I'm just saying it's still... English and French seem like the same language when you learn Tahitian, because Tahitian is just so weird, so different. At the same time, learning languages on the mission also slowed down your ability to really jump in and be able to just start teaching people and all that, because the first few months you're really struggling with the languages. So it's both a good and a bad thing. So going back, I wouldn't choose to do foreign speaking, and I wouldn't choose not to either. Just kind of leave it up to the decision that, because you don't, just for everybody else that knows, when you turn 18 now, you can apply to be a missionary for the church, and you don't choose where to go though. They send you. You just kind of fill out the application and they just decide where you go. So good luck. I'd love to hear where you're going once you get your mission call. That'd be cool. Mr. Magic Marmite. Hey Matt, an idea for a Tyranid alliance might be the captured swarm by the Inquisition, or something like their connection to the hive mind has been severed and reprogrammed. Something you may be able to integrate in a future campaign, even if it's just for a single mission. See, that one's tough, because according to the lore, that's never been able to be achieved. And so I don't want to use a narrative campaign as a way to step that far outside of existing lore. I'd rather, like, Tyranid allies, I'd probably stick with the whole Gene Stealer cult idea. Or maybe just allies of happenstance, is what I would call it, where they happen to be fighting the same thing at the same time. And then it happens to look like it's side by side, but it's not actually. Tyranids are just terrifying on their own. Being able to, like, take over their connection, unless it's like they think they took over their connection, but then when the hive mind gets there, it kind of exerts its dominance and takes them back. Like, I think I like the Amphiline Project, if that's how you say it. It's a Forge World book where it's like the Imperial Guard. There's an Inquisitor who's like coming to this place where they were doing experiments on Tyranids, and then the Tyranids kind of got away and turned into their own little mini hive. Like, that's kind of the cool thing that I would do with Tyranids, more than trying to get them controlled by others, because then that tricks on a very Zerg essence to it, which I really didn't like what Blizzard did with the Zerg. I love StarCraft, but the storyline of the Zerg kind of went from cool to weird. So, Lost My Wings 23. Hey Matt, a quick comment on the term universe. After hearing one of the starting questions in your previous sit talk, do you think there are other universes, or which that affect? The original definition of the term universe was simply all that humanity knows or ever can know. By this definition, any theory such as parallel realities, to use another more appropriate word, fit into our universe, since we can create the theory and one day may prove its validity. I believe the sci-fi genre in general is to blame for this technical misuse of the term universe, and would like to take this opportunity to point out to your captive audience. Loving all the shows, keep up the good work. Will from Leeds, UK. Yeah, I know what you mean. Semantics, words change meaning over time as well. So universe, like if you actually look at like the universe is like the one I don't know what the root in that, but I'm assuming that probably has something to do with what we know or with the location. So yeah, saying is there another universe, that's kind of impossible, because it's like the universe is everything, so you can't have another everything. And I've heard the term multiverse used quite often to clarify between the universe that we live in, meaning our reality or our whatever you want to call it, our dimension, and other ones. But yeah, it's just one of those words. But yeah, technically the term universe means everything, like everything, period. I would even incorporate everything that we can't know. It's just everything that's possibly out there anywhere is part of the universe. But when people say universe, they typically picture our dimension or our reality. Sketh. Hey Matt, do you name any of your models like Dave's Duffy and the Rejects? I haven't really. It's not something I've ever thought to do. Gimpnax. Hey Matthew, I was wondering where you got Chris. Well, that's a long story. See, he was on the side of the road one day, and we picked him up, and he didn't speak English at all at that point. He just spoke gibberish, and we were going to commit him, but after a while we noticed that his hand would kind of move in these patterns, and we stuck a paintbrush in it, and he'd start painting stuff freehanded, and it worked out pretty well. And so we thought maybe we could train him to do painting tutorials. And so we spent, it took a good couple of years. How long has he been working for us now? 2 or 3 years at least? At least, yeah. And we had to train him in the English language. That was the toughest part, actually. The painting, no problem. He was kind of just a natural painter. It's the English language that he's still having a hard time. He's still struggling a little bit with it. So sometimes we have to like get a Chris imitating voice, like somebody else comes in with a voice that sounds very similar to Chris's, and they do a bit of voiceover to correct some of the stuff. But and there's a lot of after effects when you see him in a video. Really, he's a little more he's a little kind of more, I don't know what the best way, crazy is probably the best word. I don't know if it's politically correct to say that, but it is. That's just what it is. And so we kind of have to sometimes lock him away in his room as he gets all his quick tips done, and that's just the way it is. So yeah, it was kind of a 1 in a million find. You're not going to find somebody like that very often, just picking them up off the side of the road like that. So that is the story of Chris.
Good story. It's
a good story, isn't it? The truth is so much more boring.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, our first Apocalypticon, he came, brought his Eldar stuff, and we got to know him there, and then we opened up a position for a painting job, and he applied, and we hired him. And eventually he moved down here, and see how much more boring that is?
It is.
It's like, come on, really? You hired him. Like, that's boring. I like my version way better.
Yeah, yours is more colorful.
Exactly, yeah. Way more interesting. So, continuing Gipnax's comment, while I became a Vault member for the narrative campaigns, his quick tips are my favorite videos on the site. He can hear me say that, so he's hearing me say that. His videos are the reason that I'm going to collect a 1,000-Sun army. Thanks. There you go, Chris.
Okay.
Actually, Games Workshop should be thanking Chris. If you're collecting a 1,000 Suns army because of that. Maybe they'll send a commission check his way. Probably not. Neticus. Hey Matt, was just wondering, given your views on too much violence in films, do you disagree with violence in films if it is pivotal to the plot of said film? For example, Saving Private Ryan. I think I specifically talked about Saving Private Ryan. It's a tough topic because so many people are desensitized to violence that when you try to talk to them about it, they're like, well, it's fine, I don't see any problem with it. But it's because they've been exposed to it for so long that they're just used to it. So, it's hard to answer because even I don't have like this 100% solid way of determining is there too much violence in this. I guess it's more just the way it makes you feel. It's the way I've talked about before. But at the same time, that means that sensitized people will be like, well, then this much violence is fine because it doesn't bother me. But that's kind of the problem. It's so hard. It's so hard to talk about because there's so many degrees of it, and there's also talking about like we do miniature wargaming. It's just a game that depicts things shooting at things and things destroying things. But because it's just miniatures and it's not graphic and animated, that's a big difference. And I don't care what you say. I don't agree with you if you think that it's the same thing. I've heard people say that. They're like, well, it's the same thing. You're depicting this super war thing, so why wouldn't you mind watching a super rated R movie that everybody's guts and gore are spilled everywhere all over the screen? Like, it's a very different thing. Those are two very different things. The visuals on them are incredibly different. So, yeah. So I don't know if I can satisfactorily answer that question, unfortunately. I thought Saving Private Ryan was too violent. I'll answer that one. So, but it's hard too, because even I'm desensitized to a point. Like, I enjoy comic book movies like Batman and stuff, and those things are full of violence. So, is that good? It's hard to say. As I get older and mature more and kind of understand my beliefs more, and things shift. What was acceptable to me before becomes less acceptable to me later, and vice versa. Also, I refuse to play anyone with an allied army in 40k. It makes no sense to me having Space Marines allied to demons. Yuck! Well, some of the allies make sense, and you can come up with almost any fluff reason that they're there. Remember, you're just seeing like one little aspect of the game. Anyway, keep up the great work. Nedicus, aka Dan, England. Okay, hold on a second. My wife is calling me, but I still have a few more minutes, so I'm turning it off. So, there. Because she's just going to call me on that phone next. Demidos. Hey Matt, Silver Vault member from Norway here, and I just wanted to say that you and all those in Mini Wargaming are doing a great job. Thank you. So great, in fact, that I want to see more. So my question is, would it be possible to get more videos per week than we are now? And if not videos, as I know they take time to make, then perhaps something else less time consuming, like streaming perhaps. I know I would personally love to see how you prepare for a bat rep, or how you would go about making a narrative campaign. Well, we're always going to work on making more videos. We have our current amount that we're making right now, and the vault is growing, and as the vault grows, that means we can afford to hire more people. That's really what it comes down to. Getting the second studio will allow Dave and I to be even more efficient, and allow us to not have to have conflicts over when somebody can record. Like, next week he's scheduled the studio Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and he has to, because the first 2 days he's working on a campaign, and Wednesday he has somebody coming in for a 40k battle report. So that's 3 days that I can only make videos here. And that really restricts the types of videos that I can make. And I don't really do a lot of review videos and all that kind of stuff, so those ones that's a little easier to do and set up. And so really, with the new studio, that'll allow me to still be able to work and make more videos, and so allow us to keep up our quota. But really what it will come down to is, as the vault grows, we'll be able to afford more people, because there's only so much that Dave and I can do. Such as adding Steve into the mix, which allows us to have more reliable opponents for our battle reports and campaigns. So you can expect over the years to see us expand and do more and more videos, cover more games and everything. Streaming and stuff, not so much, because it just doesn't work into our workflow. That's all I can really say about that. Benoslav, well, to be honest, the thing is that sales also bring in customers that would not get into your market at all. Look at the success of Steam and tell me sales don't work for the good of the business. I have lots of friends who don't get into the hobby at all, only because of its price. One of them, when they come into my house occasionally, starts every visit by looking through my guardsmen and commenting on them with little sparkles in his eyes, but refuses to buy any miniatures for himself because they're just too expensive for him, or so he claims. Sales and seasonal discounts bring in a whole bunch of new customers who you might not otherwise reach at all. At the end of the day, though, I would agree with you, Matt, that when someone has such a dominant market position, they give little consideration to fighting over the customer. That's why competition is a consumer's best ally, and I hope there will be some meaningful competition on the miniature wargaming market soon as well. So, I still disagree that Games Workshop would ever have to do it, even if there's major competitors, because there are no real competitors with Games Workshop's products. Like, nobody else sells Space Marines, unless they buy them from Games Workshop, and so that doesn't matter. So, like, how do you compare prices? Like, a starter set of Games Workshop of a Warhammer 40k box is not comparable to a starter set of War Machine, because they have a different number of miniatures, the game requires different numbers of miniatures. There's just so many variables that you can't say, well, there's 80 bucks and Games Workshop is 150. Well, obviously more people are going to get into this one with the $80 starter set. It's like, well, the $150 one has more miniatures maybe. And everybody around there plays that one, and so less people play this one, or whatever it happens to be. It's just, the price isn't comparable. It's not like buying one brand of milk over another brand of milk, or one brand, like getting a name brand clothes over the no name brand clothes, where they're the replaceable products. There's not really replaceable products. You might think, well, like companies like Mantic or Chapter House, but still, it's not really the right scale to compare. So what your friend needs to do, instead of waiting for Games Workshop to do a sale, go to an independent retailer who's doing a sale, or buy some stuff on eBay. Like, there are ways to get it cheaper, and that's why Games Workshop doesn't need to have sales ever. Now, having said that, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't have, like, package deals. Package deals are different than sales. Like, if you say, you know, we have this limited edition run near Christmas of this super starter set. It's like a 2-player, or it's a single-player starter set, so it's a Space Marine starter set, or a Space Marine versus Orc starter set. And when you look at the combined cost of the miniatures, it's cheaper than buying them all individually. That's a good idea, because it's not construed as a sale necessarily, and it doesn't devalue the products as much. And that's really what Games Workshop wants to avoid, is devaluing their products. Why sell it for less when there's nobody else selling that particular product or any alternatives for it? And so instead they focus on what I think that the right thing to focus on, which is making the miniatures as best as possible, making the game as good as they can, and the lore as cool as possible, and getting it out to as many people as possible. That's the better marketing thing. Leave the sales to the independent retailers and the people selling their used armies. That kind of stuff allows more people to get into it. And then do other specials like free shipping or package deals to make up for that. Whew, pretty much out of time. I'm just finishing your comment here. On a side note, have you ever considered covering a historical miniature wargame? I talked about that last week, actually. And the answer is, before I'd say no, but now I say yes, but it still won't be a while. Like a long while before that happens, because it's like a different whole aspect of the game. Whereas like covering War Machine or Infinity are kind of same subsets of the miniature wargaming. Historical is kind of the other side, whereas we're playing like the fictional wargaming. Historical is historical wargaming, and there's not a huge amount of crossover in the audiences. There is some, but not a huge amount. Like there's a whole other audience for that, and so if we're going to do that, we got to do it big, like we do this one. So not yet. One more question. ResIL. Hey again, Matt. Last week the FAQs for 7th came out before your sit and talk, I believe. And I was wondering what you thought of the changes they added. Like me, you probably were interested in Tyranids, and I saw that you now can add a 6-inch synapse range to other models in 2 different ways. And they don't even have to have the synapse creature rule built in. Yeah, like the Broodlord automatically having Dominion. When you cast Dominion, he becomes a synapse creature with a 6-inch synapse range. With the ability to make more types of models as a Warlord, how useful do you think this is? It'll be tough. It allows things like Old One-Eye to, now he's the Warlord, but it's still, the only 2 ways you can do it is, one, you're a Psyker, and so you have Dominion. And the only Psyker I know of that is not already a synapse creature is the Broodlord. Yes, because you have Hive Tyrants, you've got Zoanthropes, and that's it, right? Turbogons, so duh, Turbogons. How could I forget Turbogons? So, but they're all synapse creatures already, so it's really, that only affects the Broodlord and any future things that come out or things that Forge World might put out. The other way is there's one of the Warlord traits, and even with a reroll, the chance of getting that isn't very high. So taking Old One-Eye with the hopes that you roll the Synaptic Linchpin Warlord trait, that normally gives you, it gives you a +6 to your synapse range, or in the case of something like the Old One-Eye who don't have synapse, it gives them a 6-inch synapse range. I don't think it's really going to come into effect too much. The Broodlord is probably the only time that you'll see it really be effective. And even then it's with Dominion, so it's just kind of mixed Gene Stealer's Fearless, which is kind of nice. What could it mean to do? As for Monsters Creature Smash Attack, I think the single hit makes more sense for fluff reasons, even if it weakens our attacking options. Yeah, the problem is it's single hit. And with things like Carnifexes with Weapon Skill 3, I guess the vehicles are still hitting on 3s. You're going to have to find ways to help them reroll, because anytime you do a single shot weapon, you're just kind of asking for problems. I'd also like to ask a question about War Machine. I don't play it for various reasons, but one of the main ones is there's never seems to be much terrain in the game, and I love terrain. Why are the tables in War Machine so much more empty than others? It doesn't have the square base, regimental movement of fantasy, but still seems like continental combat where you line up in only one way and go after each other. Do I just not get it? No, I think a lot of people who play that way don't get it, because I love terrain with War Machine. War Machine is very picky. When you charge, you have to go in a straight line. It's not nearest to nearest, it's actually straight line. So the moment you add in terrain, it makes charging really hard, and that annoys players, and so they sometimes want to go lighter on terrain. But I think that War Machine shines the best when you still have a good amount of terrain. Maybe not like infinity level terrain, because that gets a little crazy. Because if a charge lane is blocked at all, then it's really hard to get in. But still more than you typically see. And so you definitely can play with more terrain, definitely. Now, when you play with a lot of terrain, there's certain armies like Legion with their Eyeless Sight that'll have certain big advantages, so you have to be careful of that. It can really unbalance the game a lot more than, say, 40k does. 40k, it unbalances the game if you don't have terrain. Infinity, same thing. Like, the game just doesn't make any sense without terrain. But War Machine you can play it either way. You could actually have an empty board and just the models, and because it plays a lot like chess in the sense that your positioning really matters, because that whole like straight line thing and blocking line of fire through the bases, like the models actually matter. It's not true line of sight. It actually uses the bases of the models. You can actually play it without terrain, and the game works. But it's just so much more interesting when you throw in the trees and the buildings and the linear obstacles and all of that. Well, thank you for watching, and thank you for all your questions. Of course, if you want to leave a question or comment for next week's show, make sure you leave it in the comments below. If you're watching this on YouTube, click the link in the video description and leave a comment at that page. And like I think I like this format the best, and so I'll probably be doing this the next week. So still thumb up questions that you want. Don't thumb down any questions, because just thumb up the ones that you want to be answered. And with the top 10, if there's enough of them that are thumbed up, will be answered first, and then I'll just randomly choose ones after that. So get your comments in before like the Wednesday or Thursday to make sure that it's even on the list of ones that I might possibly answer. Thank you again for your questions. Thanks for watching. This is Matthew. Happy working.